or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Margaret Mack, and for the next hour I'll be reading from the May 18th issue of the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And we'll start with local news and upcoming event. Western New York Women's Foundation to host annual Western New York Signature Summit. Signature event aims to engage more than 900 professionals in all stages of leadership. The Western New York Women's Foundation invites local women, men, and allies of inclusivity in the workplace to register for the 2026 Western New York Leadership Summit at the University of Buffalo Center for the Arts on Friday, May 29th. That must be allies of inclusivity. Okay. Centered on this year's theme, Owning Your Power, Building Community, the summit will bring together people from all professional backgrounds, cultures, and lived experiences to build community, learn from one another, and strengthen leadership skills. The Western New York Summit offers attendees the opportunity to customize their experience based on their current career stage. Tailored interactive workshops and panel discussions are built around the following tracks: aspiring leaders, 0 to 5 years of career experience; emerging leaders, 6 to 10 years of career experience; experienced leaders, 10 plus years of career experience; and SHE, she, suite leaders, women at the C-suite level. In addition, a fifth track for Leadership Allies offers programming for men, which is designed for leaders who want to strengthen their role as advocates, sponsors, and partners in advancing women in leadership. The tremendous growth of the Western New York Leadership Summit has been incredibly inspiring, said Sherry Scovon, CEO of the Western New York Women's Foundation. As one of the largest gatherings of Western New Yorkers, established leaders, and young talent, it offers a unique opportunity for people of all backgrounds and career stages to learn from one another in a supportive and uplifting environment. The event is sold out for the last 2 years. Sessions will focus on a range of topics, including defining your leadership style, the art of listening, leveraging influence to create opportunities for others, and building supportive work environments. The UB Distinguished Keynote Panel will feature UB Distinguished Alumni Dr. Ellen Baker, Director, Project ECHO, NASA, and veteran; Dr. Raven Baxter, microbiologist and science communicator; Dr. Amy Butler, former Bioscience Division President, Thermo Fisher Scientific; and Dottie Gallagher, President and CEO, Buffalo Niagara Partnership. The panel will be moderated by Western New York Women's Foundation Emerita Board Member Sujanta Yelamachali. The 2026 Western New York Leadership Summit is hosted by the Western New York Women's Foundation, with presenting leadership partner Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield in partnership with the UB Office of Alumni Engagement and the UB Center for the Arts. Arlene Crocus, Director of Alumni Engagement at UB; Wee Long Leah, UB's Director of International Alumni; and Affinity Group Engagement; and Carmen Snell, Women's Foundation Board Member and co-chairing this event. It's our hope attendees of the summit come away ready to lead with confidence and build environments where everyone can succeed. No contact information here, but you can likely call UB Center for the Arts. And next we'll move to state news. Zellner announces more than $2.6 million in state funding to support domestic violence prevention and services in Erie County. New York State Senator Jeremy J. Zellner today announced more than $2.6 million in state funding through the statewide Targeted Reduction in Intimate Partner Violence STRIVE initiative to support law enforcement agencies, probation departments, and community organizations across Erie County working to prevent domestic violence, support survivors, and strengthen intervention efforts. The STRIVE initiative, announced by Governor Kathy Hochul, includes a record $23 million statewide investment to expand evidence-based strategies aimed at responding to and preventing intimate partner violence, improving coordination between agencies, and increasing support services for survivors. State Senator Jeremy J. Zellner said, "Domestic violence impacts families and communities every single day, and addressing it requires more than just reaction. It requires prevention, coordination, accountability, and support for survivors. This funding will help strengthen the partnership between law enforcement, probation departments, and community organizations across Erie County that work on the front lines to protect victims, intervene earlier, and connect survivors with the resources and support they need. These are critical investments in public safety and in people." The following awards were made in Erie County. Erie County District Attorney's Office, $1,047,000. Buffalo Police Department, $553,000. Child and Family Services of Erie County, $474,000. Erie County Probation Department, $393,000. Erie County Sheriff's Office, $179,000. The Town of Tonawanda Police Department, $18,000. The grants, administered through the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services, will support personnel, training, and collaboration between law enforcement agencies and community-based organizations focused on reducing intimate partner violence and improving survivor support services. Also under the subject of state news, we have an article written by Karen Juanita, and it's reprinted from the Amsterdam News. This is about the National Urban League. National Urban League Summit urges fair housing enforcement and home ownership. Real estate professionals, housing advocates, and community stakeholders gathered in Harlem on April 27th at the National Urban League's recently opened headquarters at 125th Street for the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, HGAR, celebration of National Fair Housing Month. The event, which combined compliance training with a call to action, featured a keynote, a plenary panel about fair housing today, responsibilities and realities, and breakout sessions about voucher compliance, disability rights, and first-time home buyer challenges. April is National Fair Housing Month, said HGAR's Bronx and Manhattan Government Affairs Director, Dr. Jeremy Meadows. And we could not close out this month without action. The HGAR leaders and officials told those in attendance that the fight for fair housing continues. Fair Housing Month marks the anniversary of the Federal Fair Housing Act, which was signed in 1968, just days after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The law was designed to end discrimination in the sale and rental of housing, but panelists said discrimination, displacement, and unequal access to financing still determine who lives where. The open plenary, moderated by HGAR President Ray Hollingsworth, asked what fair housing enforcement really looks like. Panelist answers ranged from legislative fixes and tenant organizations to a Harlem real estate broker's insistence that fair housing enforcement cannot be separated from the push to build black ownership. To me, fair housing is so crucial in places like Harlem because we've seen significant out-migration, said Manhattan Borough President Brad Holliman. A federal fair housing protections face new attacks. New York is going to have to strengthen its own enforcement, he added. The market, too. There's an expression. The market has no morals. The market, too, is pushing out our young people from places like Harlem, and we have to address that head on. Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson said, equality has to be understood as a balance, something that protects tenants, owners, and working families who still face discrimination based on issues like income sources, disability, and other categories. She pointed to the city's right to counsel law as a hard-won example of how policy can help low-income tenants get legal assistance when they face possible eviction. It took 4 years to get that done, Gibson said. The legislation was passed in 2017 after years of organizing. I'm so glad that April is the recognition month because it really gives us a chance to amplify the voices of New Yorkers. New Rochelle Mayor Yadira Ramos called fair housing a moral imperative, describing the kitchen table moment a stable home can offer and the diverse residents the Westchester suburbs often attract. In New Rochelle, she said the city has authorized 11,000 homes over the past decade and is putting affordability set-asides through a down payment assistance program with 126 affordable condos available for purchase, all coming in under $400,000, aimed at expanding first-time ownership. Maurice Russell Gray, CEO and principal broker of ESRA Realty, said there should also be an emphasis on more people adopting a long-term outlook, owning their homes. You know, who doesn't get pushed out of stuff? People who own property, he said. He pointed to links between the need for fair housing, generational wealth, and how Harlem's history was shaped by redlining and exclusion. We don't want to be generational renters. We want to be generational owners. Muriel said NUL's new building will preserve history and help pave the way for new economic ground. In the fall, we're going to open the Urban Civil Rights Museum, he said. It will focus on the experiences of Black people in the northern states, with a particular emphasis on the Great Migration, the Harlem Renaissance, and the rise of urban political and economic power in the second half of the 20th century. Above NUL offices, he added, there will be 170 units of affordable housing. Morial pressed for a commitment to hold HGAR's Fair Housing Summit at NUL every year. I'm going to ask you to adopt a motion to be a permanent location of this event each and every year, he told the room, because NUL's new headquarters can play a role in education about fair housing. Summit participants noted that legislating a path to fair housing has been difficult, but panelists said work must continue to enforce the rights that already exist. Hollyman argued that government can help close the gap by increasing housing supply and enforcement muscle, unlock the zoning potential, and by building tenant power so renters can act collectively. Gray, meanwhile, kept returning to ownership as both protection and strategy. The goal is to turn renters eventually into property owners, he said, pointing to programs like Housing Development Fund Corporation and the need for training so residents act like homeowners and business owners. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And next, the subject of national news. A statue of Barbara Ross Johns, Virginia civil rights activist, replaces Robert E. Lee's statue in the U.S. Capitol. This article is written by Lauren Victoria Burke, Black Press USA Newswire contributor. Black Press USA Newswire, and a Capitol building that still has statues in honor of Jefferson Davis, Barbara Ross Jones will be on the first floor of the U.S. Capitol in the same position the Lee statue formerly occupied. The Johns statue now joins Sojourner Truth, Mary McLeod, Bethune, and Rosa Parks as one of 4 black women honored in the U.S. Capitol in statue form. The Commonwealth of Virginia will now be properly represented by an actual patriot who embodied the principles of liberty and justice for all, and not a traitor who took up arms against the United States to preserve the brutal institution of chattel slavery, said House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, standing on stage at the U.S. Capitol. The line earned applause, and leader Jeffries was cheered loudly before saying a word as he approached the stage. The event, a dedication of the Barbara Ross Johns statue in the U.S. Capitol. Johns will replace a statue of Robert E. Lee as one of 2 statues that represent Virginia in the U.S. Capitol. The Lee statue was removed from the crypt on the first floor of the U.S. Capitol in 2020. In a Capitol building that still has statues in honor of Jefferson Davis, Barbara Ross Johns will be on the first floor of the U.S. Capitol in the same position as the statue formerly of Robert E. Lee. The Johns statue now joins Sojourner Truth, Mary McLeod, Bethune, and Rosa Parks as one of 4 black women honored in the U.S. Capitol in statue form. That paragraph was repeated. The Capitol dedicated an unveiling event featured over 200 members of the Johns family, including her 2 brothers, Ernest Johns and Roderick Johns, and sister Joan Johns Cobbs. Over 800 witnessed the unveiling, which made the event one of the most well-attended unveiling events in the U.S. Capitol. Under federal law, each state is represented by 2 statues in National Statuary Hall. The statues are selected by the state to honor notable individuals from that state's history. In 2018, the Johns statue was recommended by Virginia Commissioner for Historical Statues to replace Virginia's statue of Robert E. Lee in the U.S. Capitol. On April 23, 1951, a 16-year-old Barbara Johns led a walkout of students at the Robert Ross Moton High School in Farmville, Virginia, to protest school segregation and the discriminatory education conditions of black students. Her courage forced this country to reckon with its conscience on a scale much larger than she ever could have imagined, said Senator Mark Warner at the dedication ceremony. I'm proud to unveil Barbara John's statue in the U.S. Capitol, where she will represent the Commonwealth of Virginia and be recognized for the vital role she played in ending school segregation. At the age of 16, Barbara Johns refused to accept inequality in our public schools. Her determination led to the lawsuit Davis versus County School Board of Prince Edward County, which ultimately became part of the landmark case of Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. Her strength and unwavering belief in equality and justice helped change the entire nation for the better. It is hard to think of a better example of a Virginian to represent the Commonwealth in the United States Capitol, said Representative Bobby Scott during the ceremony. Senator Warren and Representative Scott are both co-sponsors of the Confederate Monument Removal Act. That legislation is focused on the removal of individuals who voluntarily served the Confederate State of America from display in National Statuary Hall in the U.S. Capitol. Senator Warren has spoken publicly about the need to remove public symbols honoring the Confederacy as part of broader efforts to advance racial justice. The author of this article, Lauren Victoria Burke, is an independent investigative journalist and the founder of Black Virginia News. She's a political analyst who appears on #RolandMartinUnfiltered and hosts the show Lauren Live on YouTube at Lauren Victoria Burke. She can be contacted at lburke007@gmail.com and on Twitter at @lvburke. And next up we have the column Eye on History by Eva M. Doyle. Remembering Frank Grant, who played for the Buffalo Bisons in the 1800s. The baseball season is here, and the Buffalo Bisons are now in full swing. Few people remember that Frank Grant was the first black to play for the Bisons. The history of his role in the Bisons is still not recognized by most people. Frank Grant faced a lot of racism when he played for the Bisons. Like other black ball players during his time in the late 1800s, Grant was given a hard time by his teammates. The pitchers deliberately tried to hit him. One of the pitchers told the Sports News that he threw at Grant's head every time he faced him on the field. This was common practice of many of the pitchers against the black players. It was dangerous for Grant when he played second base because the base runners ran into him trying to break his legs. Many runners slid at him with spikes, so he had to use a set of wooden shin guards for protection. It was reported that when Grant started to wear the wooden armor on his legs, the white players filed their spikes and tried to split the shin guards. Grant had to be moved to the outfield in 1888 for safety against the attacks. In Robert W. Peterson's book, Only the Ball Was White, he noted that the haughty Caucasians of the association were willing to permit darkies to carry water for them or guard the bat bag, but it made them sore to have the name of a black man on the batting list. Despite the attacks, Grant was the most accomplished black baseball player of the 19th century. He played on the same team in organized baseball for 3 consecutive seasons. Prejudice was so widespread that a resolution was passed at the International League meeting held in Buffalo in July of 1887, which directed the league secretary not to draw up any more contracts with black players. It was rumored that if Grant were rehired at the end of 1888, the Bisons would strike. The sentiment was that blacks should never play ball with white men. As a result, Grant never signed another Buffalo contract. He later toured the South with the Cuban Giants, the first black professional baseball team in the United States. It was unfortunate that Frank Grant was treated so badly. He was a good baseball player. Despite his small stature, Grant was 5 foot 7 inches tall and weighed 155 pounds. He was the leading slugger in the league with 27 doubles, 10 triples, and 11 home runs in 105 games. He also led the Bisons with base stealing with 40 thefts. Grant's speed and impressive plays were outstanding, but instead of receiving credit for his own skill as a baseball player, he was referred to as the Black Dunlap, in comparison to Fred Dunlap, a white second baseman in the 1880s. Grant was born in Pittsfield, Massachusetts in 1865. His full name was Ulysses Franklin Grant. Grant died without the fanfare usually reserved for a champion. He was buried in an unmarked grave in Clifton, New Jersey. Finally, after more than 100 years, he was inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Solomon White, who wrote the official baseball guide of early black players and teams, stated that Grant was the best of his age. He was a born ball player. If you visit the Freedom Wall located on Michigan and East Ferry, you will see his name listed on the right-hand side among Buffalo's great citizens. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And under the subject of health and safety, a time to remind motorists and motorcyclists to safely share the roadway. As the weather warms and the days grow longer, motorcycle season is once again underway across Erie County. With thousands of riders preparing to get back on the road, now is the perfect time to remind everyone that motorcycle safety is a shared responsibility. Motorcycles remain a popular choice for transportation and recreation because they are affordable, fuel efficient, and enjoyable to ride. Here in Erie County, there are more than 21,000 registered motorcyclists take to our roads each year for commuting, touring, and leisure activities. Unfortunately, motorcycles continue to be overrepresented in serious traffic accidents. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Association, data reported that motorcycles represent exactly 3.5% of all registered vehicles, but climbed to 15% of all traffic fatalities in 2024. Data from the Institute for Traffic Safety and Research shows that motorcycle injuries rose to 4,681, including 189 riders who lost their lives statewide in 2024. That is why awareness and caution from all motorists are so important. Drivers should always remain alert for motorcycles, especially when changing lanes or making turns, because motorcycles are smaller and can easily disappear into blind spots. Taking an extra moment to look twice can save lives. Maintaining a safe following distance is equally important, particularly during poor weather or low visibility conditions. Motorcyclists also play a critical role in roadway safety. Riders should always wear proper protective gear, including a DOT-approved helmet, ride within their abilities, use turn signals, and avoid riding while distracted or impaired. Motorcycle safety courses are also highly encouraged for both new and experienced riders. These programs help sharpen riding skills and may even qualify participants for insurance discounts. Information about available courses can be found through the New York State Motorcycle Safety Program. I also want to remind riders that motorcycle Registration expires annually on April 30th. Before heading out this season, be sure your registration is current and remember to renew local at the Erie County Auto Bureau. Proper licensing is equally important, as statistics show that as much as 36% of fatal motorcycle crashes involve unlicensed operators. Obtaining the correct license and training is not only required by law, it can save lives. By working together and practicing safe driving habits, we can help reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roadway. Whether you are behind the wheel of a car or riding on two wheels, patience, awareness, and responsibility make all the difference. Ride smart, ride safe, and enjoy the season ahead. For more information on motorcycle licensing and registration, visit Erie County Clerk's Office or call the Clerk's Outreach Center at 716-858-8864. Next, under the subject of health, there is an article on hoarding disorder, causes, effects, and treatment explained. An NPA Newswire. Hoarding disorder affects roughly 2% of Americans and raises to about 6% among people over 70, making it more common than many realize. Recognizing what drives it is often the turning point toward restoring space and a sense of control at home. Hoarding disorder is a mental health condition where persistent difficulty discarding items leads to overwhelming clutter, unsafe living conditions, and emotional distress. It is driven by a mix of anxiety, attachment to possessions, and decision-making challenges, though it can be treated through targeted therapy and gradual behavior change. A hallway narrows to a single path, unopened mail stacks into towers, and everyday items start to feel impossible to part with. What looks like clutter on the surface is often tied to deeper patterns of fear, loss, and control that build over time. Hoarding disorder affects roughly 2% of Americans and rises to about 6% among the people older than 70, making it more common than many realize. Recognizing what drives it is often the turning point toward restoring space and a sense of control at home. What causes hoarding disorder? Emotional attachment is one of the strongest drivers of mental health and hoarding. Items often carry meaning tied to identity, memory, or security. Something as simple as an old receipt or broken object can feel important because it represents a sense of control. Cognitive challenges also play a role. Many people with a hoarding disorder struggle with decision-making, organization, prioritization, attention and focus, memory and categorization, processing information effectively. Sorting through items can quickly become overwhelming, which leads to avoidance. Over time, that avoidance allows clutter to build and reinforce the impact of hoarding disorder. Life events often act as triggers. Some experiences can increase the urge to hold on to things. These include grief, financial hardship, major transitions, and periods of instability. In these moments, possessions may offer comfort or a sense of preparedness for the future. Family and learned behavior can influence it as well. Growing up in an environment where saving everything was common can normalize those habits. How to fix hoarding disorder. Cognitive behavior therapy is the most widely used of the hoarding disorder treatment options. It helps people understand why they hold on to items, challenge beliefs about needing to save things, build practical skills for sorting and decision making, develop organization and categorization systems, practice gradual exposure to letting items go. Large, rushed clean-outs rarely last because they do not address the underlying behavior. A slower approach, focused on one area at a time allows people to build confidence and reduce anxiety tied to letting go of things. Involving family members or trained professionals creates accountability and reduces isolation. Encouragement from others can help maintain momentum when progress feels slow. In some cases, medication may be recommended, especially if anxiety or depression is also present. Treatment plans vary, though they are most effective when guided by a qualified mental health professional. What are the biggest mistakes people make when trying to help someone who hoards? One of the most common mistakes is forcing a clean out. Removing items without consent may seem like a quick solution, though it often creates distress and breaks trust. The person may respond by shutting down or quickly rebuilding the clutter afterwards. Another misstep is focusing only on the mess. Hoarding disorder is not just about clutter, so treating it like a simple cleaning problem misses the root cause. Without addressing the emotional attachment and decision-making challenges behind the behavior, any progress tends to be temporary. Using judgmental language can also backfire when supporting hoarding disorder patients. Words that imply laziness or irresponsibility can deepen shame and make someone less likely to accept help. A supportive tone is far more effective. While it may feel helpful to organize or discard items on someone's behalf, it removes their sense of control. Recovery depends on the individual learning how to make decisions about their belongings, even if that process is slow. Hoarding disorder prevention. Early awareness and understanding of hoarding behavior, along with consistent routines, can reduce the risk of behaviors becoming severe over time. One of the most effective strategies is managing what comes into the home. Creating simple rules around new items, such as deciding their purpose immediately or limiting impulse purchases, helps prevent unnecessary accumulation. Building decision-making skills also matters. Difficulty choosing what to keep or discard is a common challenge, so practicing small, low-pressure decisions can strengthen confidence. Sorting the following keeps this skill active and prevents overwhelm. Sort mail, clothing, everyday items, paperwork and documents, and duplicates. Keep living space functional and easy to maintain encourages regular upkeep. When surfaces stay clear and storage is manageable, it becomes easier to notice when clutter starts to return. Support should not be overlooked. Open conversations with family or trusted individuals can create accountability and reduce stigma. In some cases, early guidance from a mental health professional can help address habits before they escalate. Frequently asked question: who is the most famous hoarder? One of the most well-known cases is the story of the Cuyler brothers, Homer Cuyler and Langley Cuyler. In the 1940s, their Harlem home became so filled with clutter that it drew widespread media attention after both men were found inside under extreme conditions. What is a nicer word for a hoarder? Softer everyday terms like saver, collector, or even pack rat are often used in casual conversation. That said, these words can downplay the seriousness of the hoarding disorder. In more sensitive or accurate context, it is usually better to say a person who struggles with hoarding to keep the tone respectful and clear. How can someone prevent hoarding behavior from returning after treatment? Stay consistent with simple habits after getting everything in order with help from experts like Bio1. Sort items as they come in. Keep daily spaces clear. And set regular times to review what you own before clutter builds again. Keep support in place. Check-ins with a therapist, group, or trusted person can help catch small slip-ups early and keep progress on track. Watch for triggers. Stress or big life changes can bring old habits back. Having a plan, like using coping tools or asking for help, makes it easier to stay in control. Focus on steady routines instead of big clean-outs. Small actions done regularly are what keeps spaces manageable long-term. Treat hoarding disorder. Hoarding disorder can be stressful for the sufferers and their family. With this guide, you should be on the path to healing. Do you want more help improving life for your loved ones? Make sure you explore some of the other useful posts. Hoarding disorder, causes, effects, and treatments can be looked up on ChatGPT or Google. Just look for links and information. And next up, we'll move on to the subject of education. UB study rethinks the dropout crime connection. Buffalo, New York. Dropping out of high school has been linked to higher rates of delinquency and lower socioeconomic status, but thinking of high school dropouts collectively as one group is a flawed belief that could be affecting interventions. Not all dropouts are the same, says Ashley Barr, PhD, Associate Professor of Sociology and Criminology at the University of Buffalo College of Arts and Sciences. Barr is corresponding author of a new study suggesting that dropping out of high school affects crime and later experiences when those former students reach emerging adulthood, 18 through 27. But importantly, the research shows that the link between dropout and crime varies by pathway, particularly if a student is pushed or pulled out of school. Students pushed out of school include those explicitly pushed through expulsion or suspension. Although with those implicitly pushed by feeling either unwelcome or believing that school did not provide for future success. Students pulled out of school left for reasons external to school itself, like having to care for family members or work to support their family. Relative to their non-dropout peers, push-outs exhibited unique patterns of criminal involvement across the transition to adulthood and were more likely than pull-outs to be unemployed, says Barr. Criminal involvement across this period for youths pulled out of school did not vary significantly from those who never dropped out. Students who did not fit into either category because of school closures, lack of transportation, or moving away looked a lot like push-outs in terms of criminal involvement and their attachment to conventional institutions such as marriage and work. If we were to examine dropouts as a whole without accounting for why they exited school, such distinctions would be obscure, says Barr. The findings published in the journal Emerging Adulthood have important policy implications. School administrators might try to better support students who find the traditional school atmosphere unwelcoming and provide alternate routes to graduation, says Barr. We can also develop interventions that encourage attachment to conventional institutions if students are pushed out. But we have to think broadly and think not only in terms of school discipline and its implications, but ways in which school can be made to feel more welcoming for students who do not think that school is the right place for them. The study used the National Longitudinal Survey of Youth, 1997, a nationally representative sample consisting of about 6,700 respondents first interviewed between the ages of 12 and 17 and subsequently re-interviewed annually or biannually through the age of 27. Their analysis takes many factors for dropping out into account so that students most at risk are compared with others faced by similar challenges. It is difficult to assess how dropping out of school matters for later outcomes because those who dropped out and those who did not were likely already different before they left school, Barr said. The statistical approach we used allowed us to match students on risk factors for dropping out and to compare students with similar characteristics. The current study draws on earlier work conducted by Rebecca Bolin, PhD, an analyst at the University of Texas at Austin, which considers policies and school attachment. It seems that school districts are paying attention to this sort of work, relaxing zero-tolerance policies, and considering the collateral consequences of harsh punishment in schools, says Barr. It's a start, but there's still dramatic inequality in the extent to which schools are responding. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo Criterion on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And next we have an editorial piece by Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz. The state of Erie County is strong because of good governance. I recently presented the 2026 State of the County Address at Shays Performing Arts Center. I was joined by elected officials, small business owners, representatives of not-for-profit organizations, religious leaders, and various other community stakeholders, all of whom heard my review of the past year and what Erie County has planned as we continue along with my administration's ongoing commitment to good government. I discussed many initiatives and programs during my speech, including our plans for Erie County to use surplus funding to assist first-time home buyers, the introduction of an energy efficiency program to replace older-style light bulbs, and the continued growth of the Erie NET broadband internet project. A recent editorial published in the Buffalo News supported my agenda and celebrated Erie County's many accomplishments. It applauded my efforts of good governance and how we remain focused on action, policy, and programs designed to address quality of life issues impacting county residents, including those living in poverty. If you were not in attendance last month and haven't taken the time to watch my speech, I urge you to view the video of my presentation of the 2026 State of the County Address by visiting www.youtube.com/Erie County, New York. Despite continued demand for a vocal online minority for me to ignore what's happening in our nation's capital, I remain steadfast in my criticism of President Trump, specifically his lack of clear strategy to end the war in Iran. His mixed messaging is causing significant geopolitical instability and is damaging the reputation of the United States of America. The escalating price for gas has been one of the main talking points in almost every conversation I have had recently, and the uncertainty surrounding the Strait of Hormuz will likely result in more gas price increases in the days, weeks, and months ahead, as well as an increased cost of materials used to repair roads. The policies developed and major decisions made in our nation's capital impact us locally, so expect to hear more from me in the future about the direction our country is headed in and what you can do to attempt to influence your federal representatives on important votes they will be making about funding for another overseas war and some of the silly, high-cost vanity projects being discussed in Washington, D.C. I hope you will join me in speaking out and addressing national issues that affect you and your loved ones. I also want to remind anyone who hasn't taken the Envisionary online survey to visit www.erie.gov/Envisionaire so we can collect your feedback to help guide future county policy, programs, and investments. Paper surveys are available at various senior centers and public libraries. If you have a specific question about the survey or need help obtaining one, feel free to contact David Bojanowski in my office at 716-858-8466. Also under the headline of editorials, we have an article by April D. Lee, The Reality of Financial Emergencies, Why Access to Responsible Lending Matters. Financial emergencies can happen when a household faces a sudden expense, income loss, medical bill, car paint repair, housing issue, or family crisis. Access to responsible lending matters because it can provide a safe bridge when savings, insurance, or community help are not enough. A broken transmission, surprise medical bill, job loss, or urgent home repair can change a family's budget in one day. Many people plan carefully, yet one crisis can still place pressure on rent, food, utilities, and transportation. Savings are the first line of defense, but not every household has enough cash ready when life turns stressful. Responsible borrowing can help people solve an urgent problem without creating a larger one. Better access to fair loans gives consumers room to compare terms, review payments, and avoid rushed decisions. In a crisis, the kind of structure can protect both short-term stability and long-term financial health. What qualifies as a financial emergency? A financial emergency is an urgent money problem that affects basic needs, safety, health, housing, or income. Common examples include major car repair, sudden job loss, emergency travel, medical expense, funeral costs, needed home repair. Routine bills are not usually emergencies. A planned insurance premium, holiday expense, or yearly fee should be part of a regular budget. Emergencies are different because they are unexpected, time-sensitive, and hard to delay. A strong response starts with sorting the problems by urgency. Ask whether the expense protects housing, health, transportation, income, or basic family needs. A car repair may be urgent if the vehicle is needed for work. A medical bill may need fast attention if care, medication, or treatment is at risk. A utility issue may become urgent if service is disconnected. Clear priorities makes managing unexpected expenses less overwhelming. How can responsible lending help during an emergency? Responsible lending can help when a person needs money fast but still needs clear terms and a realistic repayment path. A responsible loan should never depend on confusion, pressure, hidden cost. Federal lending principles for small dollar loans point to fair access, fair treatment, and compliance with consumer protection laws as key parts of responsible credit. Those ideas matter during financial emergencies because stress can make people accept terms that would reject in a calmer moment. A responsible lender should make the loan easier to understand before a borrower commits. The borrower should know total amount borrowed, payment dates, fees and interest, repayment length, late payment rules. Clear loan terms help borrowers make decisions based on facts, not fear. During a crisis, speed matters, but transparency matters just as much. The importance of responsible loans. The importance of responsible loans becomes clear when comparing two outcomes. One borrower gets clear terms, borrows only what is needed, and pays through a fixed plan. Another borrower accepts confusing terms, misses payments, falls deeper into debt. The difference can shape a family's next several months. A loan used well may protect a job by fixing transportation, stop a housing issue from growing, cover a needed expense while the household rebuilds savings. Responsible loans should support stability, not dependency. Borrowers should review whether the payment fits after rent, groceries, utility, insurance, childcare, and other required bills. A loan that solves today's problem but breaks next month's budget is not a safe solution. People comparing urgent financial solutions may also review banks, credit unions, community programs, employer hardship options, and licensed professional loan providers. Building stronger financial support systems. Strong financial support systems lower the chance that one expense becomes a long-term setback. Families can begin with simple steps that create more control. Start by listing essential monthly costs, including housing, utilities, food, transportation, insurance, minimum debt payments, and childcare. Then, set a realistic emergency savings goal based on those needs. Helpful steps include keep emergency money separate from regular spending money, automate savings when possible, review insurance coverage each year, track upcoming bills before they become urgent, compare loan terms before borrowing, ask about hardship programs early. A good plan does not require perfection. Consistent small steps can create breathing room before the next emergency arrives. Warning signs of unsafe emergency borrowing. Not every lending option supports long-term stability. Some offers can look helpful at first but create deeper pressure later. Warning signs include vague fees, unclear payment schedules, pressure to sign fast, promises without written terms, payments that do not fit the budget. Borrowers should slow down when a lender avoids direct questions. A safe borrowing decision should answer 3 questions. Can the expense wait? Is there a lower cost option? Can the household repay without missing essentials? Honest answers can prevent a quick fix from becoming a larger financial problem. How can borrowers compare emergency lending options? Borrowers should compare more than approval speed. Review the interest rate, the fees, the payment amount, loan length, late payment rules, and total repayment amount. Written terms should be easy to understand. Borrowers should also check whether the lender is licensed in their state. Fair offers explain costs before the borrower signs. Confusing offers deserve extra caution. Can responsible lending improve long-term financial stability? Responsible borrowing can support stability when used for a clear need and paired with a repayment plan. A borrower may protect income, housing, or transportation during a difficult period. Long-term stability still requires rebuilding savings after the emergency passes. Budget reviews, automatic transfers, and financial education can help reduce the chance of repeat borrowing. Handle financial emergencies with clear choices. Financial emergencies are stressful because they often arrive without warning. A strong emergency fund, careful budget, and practical support network can reduce the damage. Responsible loan access can also help when an urgent expense cannot wait and savings are not enough. Explore more guides and articles on our website for practical insight on money, families, housing, business, and everyday financial decisions. Contact www.blackpressusa.com. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the May 18th issue of the Buffalo Criterion. We read from the Buffalo Criterion every Friday at 7 p.m. Your reader has been Margaret Mack. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times. Following that at 9 o'clock is Discover Magazine, and at 10 o'clock is episode number 15, the conclusion of The Widow by John Grisham. Stay with us.
Hello, this is Mark Reier, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the May 25th